Hello everyone, welcome back to Your Thoughts Are Valid and I hope you all are doing great. So in today's video, we are going to learn about temporal lobe, its functions and dysfunctions which are caused due to seizure or any damage to temporal lobe. So let's start with the video. So first, let's see what is the location of temporal lobe. So it is located in the lateral part of the brain and is situated anterior, which means toward the front to the occipital cortex. Okay, anterior to the occipital cortex and lateral part of brain. Okay, so these are temporal lobe substructures. You can see that purple wala part is limbic system region, then pink wala part, light pink सा जो है that is Wernicke's area. Then there is auditory cortex जो कि blue से है, then superior temporal gyrus which is yellow, then middle temporal gyrus which is bit orange, light orange, or inferior temporal gyrus which is green in color. Moving on, so these are here just to denote. In reality, it's not like they have that color. It's just to denote here in the picture. Moving on, here you can see gross anatomy is typically divided into three parts. Like superior temporal gyrus, then middle temporal gyrus, and inferior temporal gyrus. You can see in the picture. It's not that clear. Sorry for the blurry part, but I guess it's pretty clear which one is superior, which one is middle, and which one is inferior. Then moving on to key subcortical regions within the temporal lobe. First one is limbic cortex. So in this you can see that limbic cortex is an essential part of the limbic system, a complex network of brain structures involved in emotion, motivation, and memory, and it plays a crucial role in processing emotions, forming emotional memories, and regulating mood. In regulating mood. Okay. Then moving on to amygdala. In the picture, you can see where is amygdala. You can also see where is hippocampus. So talking about amygdala, amygdala is a small almond-shaped structure which is located within the temporal lobe, and it is a central component of the limbic system, and it plays critical role in processing and regulating emotions, particularly emotional responses related to fear and threat detection. Then hippocampal formation, or simply we can say hippocampus. It is a seahorse-shaped structure located deep within temporal lobe. It is primarily associated with memory consolidation, spatial navigation, and formation of new long-term memories. Okay, so amygdala इमोशंस रेगुलेट करने के लिए होता है, प्रोसेस करने के लिए होता है, स्पेशली फियर और थ्रेट से रिलेटेड. हिप्पोकैम्पल मेमोरी कंसोलिडेशन के लिए होता है, न्यू लॉन्ग टर्म मेमोरीज स्टोर करने के लिए होता है, और स्पेशल नेविगेशन के लिए होता है. मूविंग ऑन to five distinct types of cortical connections in the temporal lobe. Okay, तो पहला कौन सा है? वेंट्रल सेंसरी पाथवे. ये पाथवे इन्वॉल्व करता है हायरार्कियल कनेक्शंस फ्रॉम प्राइमरी एंड सेकेंडरी ऑडिटरी एंड विजुअल एरियाज, and it plays a pivotal role in processing sensory information, particularly auditory and visual data. Visual projections contribute to ventral stream of visual processing, which is essential for recognizing and identifying objects and faces. And auditory projections form a parallel ventral system stream for auditory processing, enabling the recognition of sounds and speech. Basically, this pathway takes care of what we see and what we hear. It starts in our basic sight and sound areas and moves up to the front part of the temporal lobe. When we see things, it follows the vision path, and when we hear things, it follows the hearing path. Then there is dorsal auditory pathway, which projects to the posterior parietal cortex and shares similarities with dorsal visual stream. It is primarily concerned with directing movements in response to auditory information. The dorsal auditory pathway helps in determining spatial location of auditory inputs and coordinating motor responses. Basically, इससे हम ये पता लगाते हैं कि साउंड आ कहाँ से रहा है. It is similar to the way our brain tracks where things are in our vision, so it helps us locate sounds in our space. Visual and auditory projections to the polymodal temporal regions These connections indicate involvement of temporal lobe in integrating information from both visual and auditory modalities. This integration is essential for recognizing and making sense of objects, scenes, and events in the environment. Basically, this part is like a multitasker. It handles information from both our eyes and ears and work together in some areas of the temporal lobe. Then medial temporal projection. It is the projection from auditory and visual association areas into the medial temporal or limbic regions is instrumental in memory formation and emotional processing. The entorhinal complex, the entorhinal cortex, hippocampal formation in amygdala are critical for memory consolidation and emotional responses. Information from our hearing and sight areas goes into the part of brain that is involved in memory and emotions. This is like memory control center. If something goes wrong here, it can mess up our memory big time. Then frontal lobe projections, these extend from temporal association areas to frontal lobe. Uh, it is an integral part of the brain's network for coordinating motor actions, processing and regulating emotions, and managing short-term memory tasks. So these are five important pathways, five distinct types of cortical, or we can say cortical connections in the temporal lobe. First one was ventral sensory, which helped in what we see and what we hear. Dorsal auditory, which helps us in finding out where sounds are coming from. Then in visual and auditory projection, which is like a multitasker, handles information from both eyes and ears and work together. Then medial temporal, which is like memory control center. Then frontal lobe projection, which is for coordinating motor actions and processing and regulating emotions and managing short-term memory tasks. Then core functions of temporal lobe. What are the core functions? First one is language processing. इससे हम समझते हैं कि लाइक लैंग्वेज जब कोई बोलता है तो वो क्या बोल रहे हैं वो समझने में, लैंग्वेज प्रोसेस करने में ये पार्ट हेल्प करता है टेम्पोरल लोब, स्पेशली वर्निकेज एरिया जो होता है दैट हेल्प्स इन दैट. जब ये डैमेज होता है वी कैन हैव ट्रबल मेकिंग सेंस कि हम जब हम व्हेन वी स्पीक और राइट, which is known as Wernicke's aphasia. Okay. Then sensory processing, so it deals with our senses, especially hearing. It's where we process what we hear, which is crucial for understanding spoken language. It is also involved in recognizing objects when we see them. So first one is language processing, then sensory processing, then memory. So this lobe is like our brain's memory vault and it plays a big role in learning and remembering things. Okay, so the temporal lobe has different areas that specialize in these functions. Like memory, can usually hippocampus is there. Then, if something goes wrong in this part of the brain, it can affect our ability to understand language, recognize things, and remember stuff. Okay, then moving on, two primary dysfunctions of temporal lobe. First one is aphasia. So this condition makes it challenging for individuals to recognize words or comprehend a speech. They may have difficulty finding the right words, constructing coherent sentences, or understanding spoken or written language. Then there is visual agnosia, which is a condition in which a person has trouble recognizing objects despite having normal vision. For example, like they can see a pen but they cannot realize what it is or how to use it. Then proscoagnosia, which is known as face blindness, so even people who are close to us we cannot recognize them by their faces, so we try to remember them by other aspects like what they are wearing or what they are how their hair looks like. So yeah, that is prosopagnosia. Then memory disturbance, like it plays a role in forming and retrieving memories. Depending on the specific region affected, individuals may have difficulty forming new memories, which is known as anterograde amnesia, or recalling past memories, which is known as retrograde amnesia. Then there are changes in affect and personality, uh, like such people who get a damage in their temporal lobe may become more emotionally blunted. Then personality changes might also occur, like they will get more impulsive, then their uh, empathy will also be affected, and social behavior will also be affected. Then temporal lobe and epilepsy. So, epilepsy is a condition characterized by episodic disturbances in behavior or perception. It results from hyperexcitability and hypersynchronous neuronal changes in the brain. So, temporal lobe epilepsy, TLE, is like most common form of epilepsy, and it affects approximately 3 to 6 individuals per thousand in the population. What can be the cause of the of this epilepsy? Some presence of a scarring in temporal lobes, or we can say brain damage resulting from birth trauma or head injury, or we can say presence of a tumor in temporal lobe, or it can be infections affecting temporal lobe, or some metabolic disorders can be the cause. Some cerebrovascular accidents can be the cause again. Then the severity of seizures in TLE can influence overall cognitive functioning, potentially leading to cognitive decline. What are the characteristics of people who suffer from temporal lobe epilepsy? Uh, First one is irritability. They will get more irritable. Then there will be anger outburst. They might suffer from anxiety, depression. Then their speech might become pedantic. Then they might develop some obsessions, then egocentricity might be there, a unique temporal lobe personality, then occasional psychotic episodes marked by paranoid delusions and hallucinations. So these are some of the characteristics of TLE patients, and what can be the treatment. Uh, in cases of intractable TLE, जहाँ पे medications are ineffective, surgical intervention is an option. TLE surgery is the largest group of elective neurosurgical procedures. So I hope this one is also clear. Then moving on to the case study, patient HM, Henry Gustav Molaisen. So 1953 में जब HM 21 years के थे, they underwent an experimental surgical procedure to elevate his epilepsy. तो जो सर्जरी थी that involved almost complete bilateral removal of his hippocampus and amygdala. ये जो केस है पेशेंट एचएम का, इट प्रोवाइडेड क्रूशियल इंसाइट्स इनटू द रोल ऑफ हिप्पोकैम्पस एंड एमिगडाला इन मेमोरी एंड इमोशनल प्रोसेसिंग. So after his surgery, which significantly reduced his seizures, HM experienced profound and persistent anterograde amnesia. So basically, उनका जो नया घर था उनके पेरेंट्स का, he couldn't remember the address of that, but पुराना जो एड्रेस था, he could remember that. Moving on to the symptoms. So there was inability to form new autobiographical memories. So he couldn't remember events, experiences, or information that occurred operation के बाद. Then primarily episodic memory deficits. His amnesia was primarily focused on episodic memory, which is the ability to recall specific personal experiences and events. And then some degree of retrograde amnesia was also there, while most significant memory impairment was for new information, but he also experienced some level of retrograde amnesia, affecting memories of several years leading up to the surgery. Moving on to preserved abilities in this case only. First one was procedural memory. ऑल्सो मतलब उनकी एपिसोडिक मेमोरी तो काफी इम्पैक्ट हुई थी, बट उनकी जो एबिलिटी थी चीजें सीखने की, याद और उनको याद रखने की, नई मोटर स्किल्स को और प्रोसीजर्स को, दैट वाज इंटैक्ट. सो दिस इंडिकेटेड कि डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ मेमोरी सिस्टम एग्जिस्ट करते हैं and उनमें एक डिसोसिएशन होता है. शॉर्ट टर्म मेमोरी, फॉर एग्जांपल डिजिट स्पैन, तो उनकी जो शॉर्ट टर्म मेमोरीज थी जिसको कि असेस किया गया डिजिट स्पैन जैसे टास्क से, बेसिकली उनको एक सीक्वेंस ऑफ नंबर दिया गया, उनसे बोला गया कि इसको याद करो और रिकॉल करो. तो दैट वाज आल्सो इम्पैक्ट. आईक्यू, उनकी जो ओवरऑल इंटेलेक्चुअल एबिलिटीज थी एज मेजर्ड बाय आईक्यू टेस्ट, वो स्टेबल रही, एंड दैट डिडंट गेट अफेक्ट बाय हिज एमनीशिया. Then personality and motivation, HM की personality traits और motivation level भी affect नहीं हुए थे. तो जो केस है HM का, it provide valuable insight की मेमोरी फंक्शंस जो होते हैं वो अलग अलग जगह लोकलाइज होते हैं ब्रेन में एंड डिस्टिंक्ट होते हैं एक दूसरे से. इट ऑल्सो हाईलाइटेड क्रिटिकल रोल ऑफ हिप्पोकैम्पस एंड सराउंडिंग स्ट्रक्चर्स इन फॉर्मेशन ऑफ न्यू एपिसोडिक मेमोरीज. देन हाउ डू वी असेस टेम्पोरल लोब डिसफंक्शन? तो पहला टास्क हो सकता है या फिर पहला तरीका इज लाइक फिगर रिप्रोडक्शन, जिसको हम रे कॉम्प्लेक्स फिगर टास्क भी बोलते हैं. इस टेस्ट से हम क्या असेस करते हैं? विजुअल स्पेशियल एंड विजुअल मेमोरी. इंडिविजुअल्स को प्रेजेंट किया जाता है कॉम्प्लेक्स फिगर के साथ एंड देखा जाता है उनकी एबिलिटी को टू रिप्रोड्यूस इट फ्रॉम मेमोरी इज इवेल्युएटेड. इससे क्या पता चलता है कि डिफिकल्टीज क्या है विजुअल मेमोरी में और स्पेशल प्रोसेसिंग में, विच कैन बी एसोसिएटेड विद टेम्पोरल लोब डिसफंक्शन. स्टेप वन क्या है? कॉपी ट्रायल, मैक्सिमम 5 minutes, मिनिमम 2 minutes. सो एडमिनिस्ट्रेड आफ्टर इंस्ट्रक्शंस एंड मटेरियल्स प्रोवाइडेड. पार्टिसिपेंट को फिर कॉपी करने बोला जाता है फिगर को. देन इमीडिएट रिकॉल, नो टाइम लिमिट. 3 मिनट बाद दिया जाता है फिर से बनाने के लिए, बट लेकिन इस बार बिना देखे. फिर डिलेड रिकॉल ट्रायल, फिर 30 मिनट्स बाद दिया जाता है बनाने के लिए विदाउट स्टिमुलस कार्ड. देन रिकॉग्निशन ट्रायल, एडमिनिस्टर्ड इमीडिएटली आफ्टर डिलेड रिस्पॉन्स. पार्टिसिपेंट मतलब कि उनको 24 फिगर्स दिखाए जाते हैं और पूछा जाता है कि कौन सा वाला फिगर देवर आस्क्ड टू ड्रॉ. ठीक है, तो दिस इज द फर्स्ट असेसमेंट. देन देयर इज वर्ड लिस्ट लर्निंग. For example, RAVLT, Ray Auditory Verbal Learning Test. So this is used to assess हमारा attention, memory और learning ability auditory verbal domain में. It involves repeated presentation of a list of words and individuals are asked to recall and reproduce list from memory. Changes in verbal memory and learning abilities may be indicative of temporal lobe dysfunction. Then sequence tapping or we can say Corsi blocks. ये evaluate करता है spatial memory and is particularly useful for assessing spatial memory for roots. It involves a series of spatial locations that participants must tap in the correct order, assessing their ability to remember and reproduce spatial sequences. Temporal lobe dysfunction may lead to difficulties in spatial memory and route learning, which can be identified through this test. Then, learning about emotional memory. So, emotional memory involve करती है storage or retrieval ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन जो कि स्ट्रॉन्ग इमोशंस या अफेक्टिव एक्सपीरियंसेस से एसोसिएटेड हो. इमोशनल मेमोरी often associated with key temporal lobe structure which is known as amygdala, which plays a role in learning and memory process. Then amygdala is like key brain structure for processing emotional information and assigning emotional significance to experiences and stimuli. Emotional memory is closely related to associative learning, where emotional responses become associated with specific cues or events. Flashbulb memories are highly detailed and vivid collections of emotionally charged events, often formed during traumatic or highly emotional situation. The amygdala is a critical component of the limbic system, which is closely associated with processing emotions, particularly fear, threat, and aggression. Then talking about Alzheimer's disease and temporal lobe. So Alzheimer's disease is characterized by deposition of senile plaques, neurofibrillary proteins, or we can say neural filaments, and widespread neuronal loss, particularly in temporal lobe. Hippocampus and entorhinal cortex are among the first brain regions to show histological changes in Alzheimer's disease. Initial symptoms क्या होते हैं? Anterograde amnesia, then depression, irritability, language problems, and memory retrieval issues. Then there are deficits in explicit memory, while implicit memory deficits tend to develop later. Uh, पहले एक्सप्लिसिट मेमोरी अफेक्ट होती है एंड जैसे जैसे अल्जाइमर और आगे बढ़ती जाती है कुछ कॉम्प्रोमाइज पेशेंट्स सेंसरी मोटर एंड अटेंशनल फंक्शंस जो कि बहुत बाद की स्टेजेस में नोटिस होता है. अल्टीमेटली जो पेशेंट्स होते हैं अल्जाइमर के, दे बिकम सीवियरली डिमेंटेड, दे lose ambulation, and they are reduced to a behavioral repertoire consisting of a few basic reflexes. Okay, so this was about Alzheimer and temporal lobe. Then talking about hippocampus. So hippocampus plays a significant role in contextual memory. Contextual memory is the ability to remember and recall information or events within the context or environment in which they occurred. The spatial encoding. Hippocampus is known for its role in spatial navigation and encoding. It helps create cognitive maps of our surroundings, allowing us to remember the spatial context of events. Then episodic memory. Contextual memory often overlaps with episodic memory, which involves remembering specific events and their associated contexts. The hippocampus is crucial for encoding and retrieving episodic memories. It helps link various elements of events such as location, time, emotional state to create a rich contextual memory. Then pattern separation, it is involved in pattern separation, which helps distinguish between similar memories or contexts. It ensures that similar experiences are not confused with each other, allowing us to differentiate between different contexts. Moving on to neural plasticity. So, hippocampus exhibit neural plasticity, particularly in the form of long-term potentiation. This plasticity is crucial for formation and consolidation of contextual memories. It strengthens the connection between neurons involved in encoding these memories. Hippocampus has reciprocal connections to various regions of brain through two main pathways. First is perforant pathway, which is posterior pathway, and the fimbria fornix pathway, which is anterior pathway. Hippocampus is a deep brain structure, and it is challenging to dissociate its function from the adjacent cortex, particularly in humans. Surgical removal of hippocampus is associated with prominent anterograde deficit, meaning the inability to form new memories, and also retrograde amnesia for more recent events. Then types of memory affected. Notably, hippocampus seems to have more significant impact on episodic and autobiographical memories compared to semantic memories. So that was it for today's video. We learned about temporal lobe in detail, and some of its important parts like amygdala, hippocampus. So that was it, and some of the dysfunctions we learned about. So if you have any doubts in temporal lobe, please do ask in the comment section. And if you like this video, please don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and please do subscribe to my channel. And thank you so much for watching this video.